Close your eyes for a moment. Not literally, keep reading, but let something in you settle the way water settles after a stone has long since sunk to the bottom. Because what I am about to tell you will change the way you hear silence for the rest of your life. There is a sound that lives in the space between two people who once could not stop talking to each other. It is not a loud sound. It has no decibels, and yet it is the loudest thing in the room. You know this sound. You have sat in it at the dinner table, the two of you chewing in perfect synchrony, forks against porcelain, the television murmuring somewhere in the background like a nervous third party, trying to fill a hole neither of you will name. You have lain in the same bed, inches from a body you have memorized, and felt a distance so vast it could swallow continents. And some quiet, panicked part of you whispered, "Is this it? Is this how it ends?" Not with a scream, but with a hush. I want you to notice something right now, in this exact moment as you read these words. Notice your own breathing, slow it down. Because what I am going to walk you through today is not a theory, it is a descent. And like all descents, it requires that you go slowly, that you resist the urge to rush toward the exit. Carl Jung spent his entire life staring into the parts of the human psyche that most people spend their entire life running from. And what he found buried beneath layers of politeness and performance was this: silence is never empty. Silence is a language. And more often than not, it is the only language your unconscious has left, after every other door has been slammed shut by fear. So tonight, we are going to decode that language together. We are going to walk into the quiet couple's living room, the one that looks so calm from the outside, so enviably peaceful. No shouting, no slammed doors, no dramatic exits. And we are going to ask the question that terrifies most people. What if the peace is the problem? Picture them. Picture any couple you know who seems to have found some elegant equilibrium. They don't fight. Friends admire them for it. They're so mature, people say. They just don't have drama. And on the surface, this looks like health. It looks like the reward at the end of a long emotional education. Two people who have finally learned to coexist without combustion. But I want you to lean in closer. I want you to imagine standing in the doorway of their kitchen at 11 at night, watching them move around each other with the practiced choreography of dancers who no longer feel the music. Notice how their eyes don't meet. Notice how a sentence gets started and then evaporates mid-air, unfinished. Because somewhere along the way both of them learned that finishing it costs more than either of them can afford to pay. This is the trap. This is the great and terrible illusion of modern intimacy. We have confused the absence of conflict with the presence of connection. We have built entire relationships on the architecture of avoidance and called it peace. But Jung would ask you a different question. He would lean forward, pipe in hand, eyes sharp as a surgeon's, and he would ask, peace for whom? Peace for the relationship? Or peace for the ego, that fragile, image-obsessed part of you that would rather die slowly in silence than risk the humiliation of being truly seen? Let that settle into your body for a second. Peace for the ego, because this is where our story really begins. Jung gave us a word for the mask we wear to be acceptable to the world. He called it the persona. Not a lie exactly, but a performance so well rehearsed that we forget it's a performance at all. In public, the persona is easy to spot. It's the smile at the office party, the composed voice in the meeting, the carefully curated version of ourselves we hand to strangers like a business card. But here is what most people never realize, what almost no one tells you. The persona does not stay outside your front door. It follows you home. It sits down at your dinner table. It slides into bed beside you at night, wearing your partner's face, wearing your own face, and it negotiates on your behalf, without your permission, exactly how much of the truth is allowed to be spoken out loud. Because the persona's only job, its sole obsessive purpose, is to maintain the image, not the truth, the image. And silence, real, prolonged, suffocating silence, is very often the persona's finest weapon. Think about it. A fight, however painful, is honest. A fight says, I am hurt and I refuse to pretend otherwise. But silence, controlled, practiced silence, allows both of you to keep performing the role of the couple who doesn't fight, even while something underneath is dying by inches. You go quiet not because there's nothing to say, but because saying it would shatter the mask. And some primal part of you has decided that keeping the mask intact is more important than keeping the truth alive. Feel that for a moment. Really feel it. How many nights have you swallowed a sentence, a real one, a true one, because speaking it out loud felt more dangerous than the ache of holding it in? How many times have you looked at your partner across a silent room and felt words rising in your throat like a tide, only to watch yourself almost outside your own body? Choose the quiet instead. That was not weakness. That was your persona doing exactly what it was built to do, protecting the image of us, even at the cost of the real us underneath. But here is where it gets darker, and here is where I need you to stay with me, because this is the part most people flinch away from. Beneath the persona, Jung tells us, lives something else entirely. Something the persona was specifically constructed to hide. He called it the shadow, the disowned self, the collection of every impulse, every need, every unbearable truth you learned, very early in life, was not safe to show another human being. Your anger, Your neediness, your jealousy, your grief, your desperate aching hunger to be chosen fully without conditions. All of it exiled into the dark basement of your own psyche, because somewhere, someone taught you that showing it would cost you love. And here is the unbearable irony, the one that should send a chill straight down your spine. The very silence you use to protect the relationship is the exact mechanism your shadow uses to try to destroy the mask keeping it imprisoned. The tension you feel in the quiet room is not empty air, it is pressure. It is your own exiled self, hammering on the walls of the basement, using the only frequency it has left because every verbal channel has been rerouted through the persona's careful filters. Silence isn't peace. Silence is a pressure valve, and something somewhere is building toward a release. I want you to sit with an image for a moment. Picture the psyche as an old house. Upstairs, in the well-lit rooms, the persona hosts dinner parties, charming, composed, saying all the right things. But in the basement, something has been locked away for years, and it has not been idle. It has been growing. And the silence between you and your partner, that thick, suffocating quiet you've mistaken for maturity, that is the sound of footsteps on the basement stairs, getting closer. Every single night you don't speak the truth, you're not preserving the house. You're weakening its foundation. Now, why would anyone do this to themselves? Why would two people who claim to love each other conspire, night after night, in total silence, to bury the very things that might save them? The answer lives in the ego, and it is more primitive, more animal than you'd like to admit. The ego's core directive was never happiness. It was never even love. Its directive is survival, and to the ego, the terror of breakup, of abandonment, of being left alone in the dark, registers as something close to death. So when a truth rises up that feels like it might crack the relationship open, a confession, a need, a long-buried resentment, the ego does not calculate whether honesty might heal you. It only calculates threat. And in the face of threat, it does what every frightened animal does. It goes still. It goes silent. It plays dead, hoping the danger will simply pass over you and move on to someone else. This is why you have swallowed words that were begging to be spoken. This is why you have watched your partner's face shut, mid-sentence, like a door closing on a room you were never allowed to enter. It was never coldness. It was never the absence of love. It was the ego standing guard at the gate, convinced that the truth was the very thing that would end you both, when in reality, the unspoken truth was already ending you, slowly, silently, one quiet dinner at a time. And so here you are. Maybe reading this in a house that has grown a little too quiet lately. Maybe recognizing, with a discomfort you can't quite name, the shape of your own living room and everything I've just described. I want you to notice that discomfort instead of running from it. Sit inside it for one more moment. Because what we are about to uncover next, the exact mechanism by which your shadow hijacks the silence and turns it into its own desperate form of speech, will change forever how you hear the quiet in your own home. Let's go back into that house, back down toward the basement stairs, because I promised you the mechanism, and a promise, once spoken, deserves to be kept. Here is what almost nobody understands about silence, true, charged relational silence, the kind that makes the air in a room feel thick enough to touch. It is not one silence. It is two silences, layered on top of each other, and you have been mistaking them for the same thing your entire life. The first silence is the persona's silence, controlled, deliberate, a kind of social anesthesia designed to numb the room so nothing sharp can cut through. But underneath it, if you listen closely, if you let your attention drop the way a stone drops through water, you'll find a second silence entirely. This one is not calm, this one is not controlled. This is the shadow's silence, and it does not feel like peace at all. It feels like held breath. It feels like a held fist. Notice right now whether you can recall a moment exactly like that. A dinner, a car ride, a bed shared in the dark, where the quiet in the room had a texture to it, almost a temperature, almost a weight pressing against your sternum. That was not nothing. That was the shadow, speaking the only way it still could. Because this is the mechanism, and I want you to really absorb it. Let it drop all the way down past the part of your mind that likes tidy explanations, into the part of you that already knows this is true. The shadow does not have access to your vocabulary. Your vocabulary belongs to the ego, and the ego, as we said, is standing guard, filtering every word before it's allowed to leave your mouth, deciding what is safe, what is threatening, what might crack the mask. So the shadow, exiled from language, does what every exiled thing eventually learns to do. It finds another way in. It smuggles itself into your body instead, into your jaw, clenched just slightly tighter than it should be, into your shoulders, carrying a tension you can't quite locate the source of, into the strange heavy fatigue that settles over you the moment you and your partner run out of small talk and the real conversation should begin but doesn't. That fatigue is not random. That fatigue is a cost. It is the price of holding an entire unspoken self underwater. And holding something underwater, as you already know in your bones, takes enormous strength. Strength that has to come from somewhere. Strength that is quietly bankrupting you both. This is why the silent couple is so often the most exhausted couple. Not because nothing is happening between them, Because everything is happening constantly beneath the surface neither of them is allowed to disturb. Now, I want you to consider the wake-up call. Because Jung believed, with a conviction that bordered on the sacred, that the psyche does not tolerate suppression indefinitely. What is denied does not simply vanish. It goes underground, and from underground, it begins to engineer its own return, often through the very silence meant to contain it. Have you ever noticed how the quiet between two people has stages? At first it feels almost comfortable, companionable even, the silence of two people who don't need to fill every moment with noise. But somewhere along the way, without either of you marking the exact night it happened, the quality of the silence shifts. It stops feeling like rest and starts feeling like distance. And if it continues unaddressed, it stops feeling like distance and starts feeling like danger. A silence with teeth, a silence you can feel your partner constructing sentences inside of and then, at the last second, deleting. That shift is not decay. I need you to hear this clearly because it will change how you interpret every quiet night from this point forward. That shift is not the relationship dying. That shift is the shadow escalating its signal because the earlier, gentler signals were ignored. Think of it as a knock that went unanswered, becoming a harder knock, becoming eventually a fist against the door. The silence is not trying to end you, it is trying to wake you. It is the most patient, most persistent, most misunderstood alarm system the human psyche has ever built, and almost everyone responds to it by hitting snooze, by distracting themselves with work, with their phones, with the television's hollow murmur, anything to avoid the one thing the silence is actually asking of them, which is to finally tell the truth. And here is the reframe I promised you at the very beginning, the one that will sit with you long after this video ends. That suffocating silence between you and your partner was never proof that the love had died. It was proof that something inside you was still alive enough to protest its own burial. Think about that. A truly dead thing does not create tension. A truly dead thing does not press against your ribs at 2 in the morning. Only something alive can ache this much to be released. The silence you have been so afraid of, the silence you have interpreted as the beginning of the end, may in fact be the last living nerve in the relationship, firing again and again, begging you to feel it instead of numbing it away. I want you to imagine just for a moment what it would feel like to stop treating that silence as an enemy. What if the next time it descends, heavy, familiar, thick as fog in that room you know so well, you didn't reach for the remote or the phone or the exhausted retreat into sleep? What if instead you simply sat inside it, let it press against you, let yourself feel, without flinching, the exact shape of what it's trying to say? Somewhere beneath that pressure is a sentence. It has been there for a long time. It might be as small as I feel invisible when you look at your phone during dinner. It might be as vast as I am terrified you no longer choose me the way you used to. Whatever it is, it has been waiting patiently, in the dark, for you to stop performing peace long enough to let it breathe. This is the threshold every silent couple eventually reaches, whether they recognize it or not. A choice disguised as nothing, as a Tuesday evening, as an unremarkable quiet dinner, but underneath it is the most important choice two people can make. Keep feeding the mask and watch the basement grow more crowded, more volatile, more likely to eventually break the floor beneath you both. Or take the terrifying, trembling risk of finally speaking what the silence has been trying to say on your behalf imperfectly for months, maybe years. Because here is the truth Jung understood better than almost anyone who came before or after him. The relationships that survive are rarely the ones that avoided pain. They are the ones brave enough to let the shadow finally speak, out loud in the light, to the one person who was always meant to hear it. And that, more than anything else, is what your silence has been trying to tell you all along.